Hello, why isn't anyone talking here?
The
Why
stream
is
is
someone
live.
talking here particularly?
Arnav, the stream is live, so please mute yourself.
Get closer.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello. Is am I audible?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So welcome everyone to day 2 of TechStream, and we are very excited to host you again. And I hope you guys had an amazing day, amazing night or day wherever you were logged in from yesterday. And if you haven't, if you missed out our yesterday's session, you can just check the YouTube channel and you will find the recording there. So yesterday we had an amazing lineup of amazing guest speakers, starting from Donna Sarkar, then Chirag Mishra and Sonia Sehgal. So if you missed out that session, you can always go back to our channel and watch it. So for today's session, we are going to dive into coding and web development in specifically. So we are going to look into JavaScript and get an overview of how JavaScript works and why do you need it and all of that. So that will be done by Aanisha. And the next session after this, after JavaScript, after you get an overview and get things going on with JavaScript, then I will be helping you out with how you can get started with React JS. Now React is a little bit for React you need JavaScript, so we are going to do it in that order. So I hope you guys have a good session today. And Smriti, do you want to add something to that?
So I hope you guys enjoy Sayan's and Anisha's session today. It's going to be really informative. If you guys have any questions, we again will have a Q&A interactive with the speakers themselves. So hope you guys enjoy it.
Awesome, amazing. So I think we have Aanisha here with us, and she's gonna share her screen. I'm gonna stop sharing mine. Okay, so Aanisha, you can share your screen and then you can start with the session of JavaScript. And if you guys have any questions, you can always put it in the chat section. So we'll be monitoring that and helping answering your questions. Aanisha, you have a lot of background noise. Can you just do something about it? Okay, Aanisha, let me know if you're ready. Okay, then we can begin with. Okay, so I think when the time she is getting ready, let me talk to you about what is the MSP program for. We saw registrations of almost 400 to 350 to 400 registrations, and I think most of you we had the question of are you an MSP or not, and most of you are not MSPs. So let me tell you about what is the MSP program, and almost 80 to 70 to 80% of you here are not MSPs. So the MSP program is something which is organized by Microsoft, and what you have to do is you need to apply to student partners. I believe it's Microsoft studentpartners.com or something like that. So what we do is we try to empower you. We try to do these sessions. We try to organize hackathons and local events or these online webinars or even hackathon series like we are doing right now. We are organizing a webinar series. So we try different ways to help you learn new things, and so that you can also help others learn them, and you can teach others the same thing. So that is what we are in a nutshell. Now we do a lot of stuff, but that is something which we do in a nutshell. So if you want to be an MSP, there is a link in the chat section which you can go and register yourself. You need to make videos, and you can find tons of application videos on YouTube. You can take a reference from them, or you could ping any of us, any of the MSPs, and they'll help you and they'll guide you. So that is awesome, and we would love to have a lot of you in our community because we have such a nice community. And I think that is or if you have any questions for in general about MSP, we would love to answer them. You can always ping in the chat section and we'll be monitoring them. Okay, so I think Aanisha is ready with her presentation. So we can begin with JavaScript now. Okay, enjoy.
Okay, so I'm Aanisha Bhattacharya and I'll be talking on an overview of JavaScript and ES6 script. So, what is JavaScript? JavaScript is often abbreviated as JS, which is a programming language that conforms to ECMA script specification. But what really explains JavaScript is this image. Here, like we can see, HTML is like this skeleton which provides the static framework to any website. CSS looks after the visual aspects. So we get a mannequin or a model. But what is the difference between any model and us human beings? Is that we can respond to changes in external surroundings which a mannequin can't. And this is what JavaScript does in case of a website. It provides the nervous system to the website with which it can respond to client-side interactions. So, any HTML web page is basically constructed as a tree of objects known as the DOM or Document Object Model. Here you can see a very basic HTML structure which is cast as a tree of objects where the root is the HTML. Then we get the head and the body, and head has title and the text which it's contained. The body has again a script tag, a tag and an h1 tag. Like this is a very simple example, but any website, the static part can be made into the document object model which the JavaScript manipulates to dynamically respond to client-side changes. Now, how does it do that? We get various methods to manipulate the HTML elements, like I'll show. Here we have a script tag. Here we can see a script tag, a section tag. Now, how will it be manipulated by JavaScript? We use Like, see, we have a section tag and
Anisha, your screen is not visible. Can you just make that visible again? Yeah, it's visible now.
yeah. See, here we have the section tag, which does not have any content in it. But if we want to manipulate it, we can basically use get elements by tag name section and set its inner HTML to a hello. I'll save it and I'll see the output. See, it says hello world and then there is a hello. This is how JavaScript can be used to manipulate the objects already present in an HTML DOM. Like this, there are various modes of manipulating the HTML elements like get element by ID, get by class name if the tag has a class name or ID associated with it. We can set the content by using .innerHTML like we saw. Element dot attribute to add an attribute. Element dot style dot property to add a new style. Also, we can create an element, remove an element, append to it, replace, and have various methods to manipulate the DOM. Also, we have various event handlers like onClick, onChange, which are triggered when a particular client-side response is got. Like if we click on a button, this onClick revokes a function which has specific code attached to it and that code is executed. Now to facilitate the DOM manipulation, we have further functions, objects and arrays, and loops. Now, how does a function help? A function, like in various other programming language, here also it is a block of code designed to perform a particular task. A JavaScript function is executed when something or some event evokes it. Like here there is a button and here we have an onClick event handler which calls the function ch when it's clicked. Whenever this thing happens, it goes to the function ch and here the element div which is having an ID d changes the color of this hello world to red. Similarly, functions can be used to perform calculations and be used to return results. Next, we have objects and arrays. The object and array notations are same as any other programming language. See here the following snippet, the person is used to denote an object where the person object has various attributes like the first name, last name, age, and eye color. Similarly, we have a string array. Now, for a person, for the object person, we use dot operator to access its element, and for array we have its array indexing, which is similar to any other coding language. Next we have loop, which is something very common, like the
Anisha?
for loop.
Yeah, can you just go full screen? Some of the participants are having difficulty in seeing your screen. So can you just switch to full screen?
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So loop is something we are very familiar with. For loop is, we have a variable I which is equal to 0, which goes till some n and is incremented by one step. And inside there are some conditions which are fulfilled every time the loop iterates. While loop is quite similar to for loop, just the increment thing is done inside the condition after the condition is fulfilled. We go inside, the thing is printed, and then we have an increment. Do while does the same, but before the checking, first we have the loop running, and then the increment occurs, and then it is checked whether I is less than 10 or not, and if it is, the loop exists. Now we have been talking about JavaScript since a long time, and we saw that there are many features of JavaScript. But then what is the need of this ES6 or ECMS6 script? It is basically used to overpower JavaScript with certain functionalities which was lacking till date. So ECMS script or ES6 script was found in 2015 with Safari 10 and H14 were the first browsers to support it fully. But now, as we can see that most browsers support ES6 script in their website. So, what is new in ECMS script? That is the let and const keyword. We are quite accustomed to see var I equals to something. Var is the replacement of all int, char, string which we had in Java, C, C++. But var comes with a problem that whenever you declare a var, it is declared in function scope that entire function can access the value. Whereas with let, this doesn't happen. Let comes with a block scope where the variable is accessible only to a certain block. And const is similar to let. It is used to create immutable constant and with values of which can't be changed. But how does it even matter? So I'll clear all this. Now I'll grab a bit of code from here. So what does this code do? Here is a for loop running from I 0 to 50. It creates an element div, which is an element of div tag. Now when this div is on clicked and on, we go inside the function and it gives a console message that the number of div which was clicked and the following div block background color changes to red. Now we just append, using append child, append it to the section tag. Now see, here we are using var I equals to 0 to declare it. Let's save it and show you the output. See here, we can see 50 black boxes, and by whatever condition we gave, if we click on a block, the corresponding message should be reflected in the console. But when I click on the first block, you see it is saying clicked in 50. However, we have clicked in the first block, so basically it should say clicked on 0. Why does it happen? And the color is also not changing. This is due to this is the main problem with var. Now, as you can see, I have used a var keyword to declare my I. So it is defined as a function scope, which is in the entire function. Its value would be assigned 50 anywhere I print it. However, this problem can be solved if we use let keyword. So let makes it local to the for block. Our desired result, whatever we wanted. I'll show you now. See, now we have this same 50 blocks, and now if I click on the first, it's saying it's clicked on 0. I clicked on 7, saying 7. I clicked on any random thing, you can see the color is also being changed and the corresponding index is also being reflected. This is why ECMA provides this let keyword so that we can use the variable block wise and they are not available in the whole function. So here we got the benefit of let and const keyword. Next we have the template strings, which are used to easily format the output displayed. I'll show you this also. Okay, so with the previous example, I will just use template string to show that how there can be a difference in the way we console log the statement. So we have this very classic thing where the double quotes presents the string and plus I with which we concatenate the variable. But using template string, we can use this in this way. And see, if I click on any of the things, the same, see, box 15 is clicked, box 10 is clicked. Now, why is template strings used? To format our console log thing better. Like if we add an extra space or add an extra line, this thing would be pre-formatted, and wherever the dollar thing occurs, it will replace it with its corresponding value of the variable placed inside it. Next, I will clear all this thing. Next feature of ECMA script is the spread operator. The spread operator is used to concatenate arrays within arrays. Now we can do it like we have an array. another array. And we add the first array over here. We save it. Lastly, we console.log So here we can see when we console.log the second array, we can see the HTML is reflected as an element, but the second part is reflected as an array as we put it forward. Now, if we go inside it, we can see the React and JS. But how can we show the total array to be HTML, React and JS and not this array thing? We can do it very easily using spread operator. What we do is basically place 3 dots in front of this courses which is already an array. And now we will see a total array showing HTML, React and JS together. And as you can see, HTML, React and JS are displayed as in a single array instead of React and JS symbolized as the array. Next, we move on to another utility of ES6 script, which is the map function. Whoever uses Python, we have this dictionary structure. Now we can get the benefits of dictionary structure in JavaScript using the map variable. We can declare a map using the new map keyword, and to add elements to a map, you have to basically use courses dot set
Aanisha, your mic is muted, so can you please unmute that? Yeah, so you're audible now.
we have var courses which is a map which we can declare using the new map, and to add values to a map we use the command dot set. Here I am creating one value. Now we have created one map. Now for a map, this is the key, which is the React node, the first part, and the value it contains is this part, that is the description, front end, back end. Now, whatever value is specific to a particular key, we will just use the .get method, that is here .get. We'll save it. And you can see it shows the description front end here. And this is an object. You can click into the details to see. Similarly, we have the set method. The set method is basically like an array, but it contains no duplicate elements. So if we have an array data and it has various numbers, so it has unique and 4 unique entries, and now we will just get it inside a set. Now we will see the difference. Size is used to see the size of the set, and data.length gives the length of the array. Now we can see that first the data.length, that is the length of the array, is 7. However, when we put it inside a set, it removes all the duplicate elements and gives the result to be 4. Now moving to the next aspect of ES6 script, that is the change of syntax in for loop. We have a change syntax in case of for loop also, where we can easily get using this syntax, it iterates to the letters of this given string JavaScript. Earlier, we had to store it into a string and then iterate over the string like an array, but here we can do it very easily. As you can see also, all the letters of JavaScript have come in the console. Now there are various other facilities of using the ES6 script. Like we have base arrow functions. Earlier we had to write basically declares a function which shows the names of the student passed in the array as console.log. But with ES6 we get a very new kind of representation of a function, that is using the arrow function. With arrow function we can basically reduce this syntax. And you can see this. See, the names of the students are represented here. With the arrow function, we can basically add more statements to the function, right? And basically add on anything after this. This helps us to reduce the number of lines in our code and make our code look better. Another benefit of using ES6 script is the generators and the iterators. Generators and iterators help us to iterate the for of loop even more easily. See, here the function star is used to create a generator, and the yield statement is basically used to return the value. Now we have an array having the various names HTML, CSS like this, and we create a function, and here we create an inter function which iterates over the courses array using course.next. So basically you can, using a generator, iterate over any array using the .next method, and .done is used to check whether we have finished iterating over the entire array or not. We have iterated over the array and all the elements of the array are represented. In this way, we don't need a specific size, like we don't need to check whether the array element index has reached till the maximum index, and we can easily iterate over any data structure using the generator method. Another thing is the iterator, which also helps us to iterate over any string or any data structure. See, here iterate it creates an object of this title string, and this symbol.iterator creates an iterator object of this particular string, and it basically .next basically points to the next position. Here, as you can see, the string is JS, but I have console.log it 3 times. So you will see for first iteration it gives J and the value of done is false. Second, it gives S the value of done is false. But whenever we have reached the end of the string, it does not show any particular error. Rather, the done value becomes true and can be used to check for the end of any data structure or string you are iterating. And the value becomes simply undefined. Now, what comes next is ES6 promises. ES6 promises are used to help synchronize the asynchronous parts of JavaScript. With the promise is mainly used to handle cases where we get data from any external source or APIs. So I'll show an example. We can get values very simply from any third-party APIs using this promises aspect of ES6 script rather than using the XML HTTP request and whatever long code we had. Here I have used a chemistry API which returns the symbols and the details of all symbols. Now you can see the fetch and simply I have given the URL and then console.log. These two statements can help you display the data from any API. See, I've got the response, but it's not quite readable that it has the entire response, which is not, we are not getting the data which we wanted. Now to get the data which we want from an API, we have to basically add one statement to it. Here, using the dot then rest equals to response.json converts the entire data to JSON and only shows the part of data which is readable and whatever we want to see. Here you can see all the elements and their details are given. Now we can display whatever specific value like dot appearance, dot atomic mass and create our website accordingly. Coming to the last new feature of ES6 script is class. We have class method. We have methods to declare class in Java, C++, but now with JavaScript also, we can create class constructors like and so on. Now the syntax to create class is here we have made a class called car. It has the constructor brand and using this we specify the car name variable to brand. Now we create an object of the class that is my car equals to new car and we pass in the value Ford. Now this goes inside the constructor and the car name value, the brand value goes to car name. Now when we console.log mycar.car name, we will get to see Ford as a result. And you can see here we got 4 as the answer. Like this, we have methods to create inheritance where a subclass inherits from a superclass, much similar to what we do in Java. Also, another feature of ES6 script is the async and await function. Here, using the promise and async function, we can create a timer sort of thing which will delay, like we create a count to 5 function using async. Here, first we would see the output 0 and there would be a delay of 2 seconds. The seconds into 2 into 2000, 2 into 1000, that is 2000 milliseconds. And then the next console.log will occur. And finally, we call the count to 5 function to see the output. Here, this delay creates a promise to set, which is used to set a timeout of the given value of seconds. We will add a few more. And see, you saw 0 and then 2 and then there is a delay of 3 seconds and then you got 5. In this way, we can, whenever we are fetching data or creating any website where we want to delay our response, this method helps us to create the delay in a quick way. Other small functionalities which the ES6 provides is like to check is nan with or is safe number, which checks if a number is within the value of integer range, that is minus 2 to the power 31 to plus 2 to the power 31 plus 1. So here we end our session with the, I hope you all got a very basic overview of JavaScript and ES6 script. And another main benefit of ES6 script is that if you know ES6 well, you can get started with React very fast, and that is what our next session is about. Hope you all will like and enjoy it too.
Thank you, Aanisha, for that amazing session on Java. We got one question come in. How much HTML and CSS does one need to know before they move on to ES6 and Java?
See, we basically need to know the various tags. Like you need to create a static website and then you can add the functionalities of it. So I would recommend to learn HTML and CSS first, that you are confident enough to design a full static website, and then you can get started with vanilla JS and ES6 to make your website functional.
Okay, I think that's it for the Q&A for this session. Thank you so much, Aanisha, for that amazing session. Now we're going to be joined by Sayan, who's going to be talking on the basics of like React JS. And Sayan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, I think I'm ready to begin. Now I'll just share my screen, and I have a lot of things basically going on. So I think it's visible. Oh, there you go, another thing. Okay, so a lot of things. Let me. Okay, why isn't it set up? All right, amazing. So I think I'm good to go. Can you see the screen? Is it live?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. So let's just begin with React JS. Now I think it's pretty amazing that you need to. I saw a lot of people actually like asking questions about whether they need to know ES6 or JavaScript before they start with React. But I would say since React uses ES6, it uses ES5, ES6. You can use any ECMAScript with React. That doesn't really matter. But yeah, you should have like a basic understanding of ES6 or like JavaScript. So that is why we had this session before. We had this JavaScript session before React. And in this session, what I'm planning to do.
Sayan, could you be a little louder for the
okay.
audience? Okay.
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, is it good enough? I think I just lost my speaker there for a moment. Is it my OBS? Okay, so I think it's good. Yeah, so I was saying that you do need a little bit of ES6, or since React uses ES5 or ES6, so you definitely need one of those or any kind of JavaScript to begin with, because since React is a part of JavaScript, it's a JavaScript library, so you definitely need that. And that is the reason why we had this overview of JavaScript first. And let's see how much I can cover in this one, because I have plenty of things in mind. I want to also build a project, like a small project, so that you get the idea of how things are being built with React. And that all depends on the time though, but I think we should just go and enjoy this session. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, a little introduction about me. So my name is Sayan. I'm a Beta Microsoft student partner currently. I have worked at TSC, which is Developer Student Club, and Mozilla Club, and also mentored at GoScript. And I like writing a lot, so I write write about technical topics basically on Hacker Noon and Medium. So that's me. So let's dive directly into React, since you already have seen what JavaScript is. So what is basically React? So React is a JavaScript library. Now a lot of people confuse about like React being a framework or a library. So React is actually a library and not a framework. Okay, you need to know that, because you need to be specific about it, because Angular is a framework and not a library, but React is a library and not a framework. So that is my next point, that React is not a framework. And this is the point where a lot of people get offended because you call React like a framework. So please don't do that, because React was actually Facebook actually created it, so it is open source. You can definitely visit GitHub and see this. Let me just do that right now, because React is so popular. It has over like maybe let me just do a create React app, and yeah, this one. So it's under Facebook, so it's under this organization called Facebook, and you can see Create React App, which is the main application, which is like React, which Facebook created. So it's open source, it's on GitHub, and you can see it's used by 1.9 million, and it has 78k stars. So that is huge. If you are like anywhere an open source contributor or something, like if you have ever done open source, then you would definitely know that this is huge. So it's React is loved by a lot of people. So there you go, it is open source, just proof. Now let me get back to my slides. So React is built for user interface for the front end. So you can't do backend stuff with React. Now why am I telling this is React is pretty versatile, and you can use it in almost all cases, but it is kind of difficult because the way React is built is mainly used to handle the front end. So the view, basically, which we call the view layer, that is what React handles, or what we use the library to handle. Now that is my next point, that React is the view layer of an MVC application. Now if you know MVC, it is like model view controller, which is that's a framework which is used in industry. So that is, you don't have to worry much about it if you're like not into that much architecturally. Like if you want to follow a code architecture, like clean architecture, code architecture, that is where you use MVCs. You have your model, you have your view, and then you have a controller which controls your application, and you want the whatever you have done to be reflected. So that is where the view comes in. So that's like an architecture, that's like a framework. So MVC is a framework. It's so React is the view part of an MVC. Okay, and that's about it, I guess, for React. Now we will move on to the setup and installation. Now I will be covering I will make this beginner friendly, as well as for those of you who have just worked with React, maybe like just started with it, or just left it because you didn't find it interesting. So I want every one of you to feel comfortable, so I have designed it as such. So I think all of you enjoy this. So let's start with the installation part. So there are a lot of things I haven't covered it with React right now, so we will move in slowly, and we'll learn about all of them in a correct manner. So for now, we are going to move into setup and installation. So what do you need for the setup? So first of all, you need Node. So why do you need Node? Is because Node is a package manager. Okay, npm is a package manager. Node, if you go to node.nodejs.org, I believe that was the website, which I'll go in just a minute. So why do you need Node? Is because Node has all the packages, right? So it has its own like a database, maybe like a registry, a file system where you have all these different packages. So it is a package manager, which means it manages all the different packages. Like you have tons of files and tons of packages in Node. So when you install, or you do an npm init or an npm anything, you get all the different Node modules in your particular folder. So that is why, because it's a package manager, so it installs all of the packages which you need for your project. Now we'll move into that, and we'll see how we can install that and stuff, but let's just move on to the second point, which is what you need is a virtual or a local code editor. Now why? Because there are tons of options. You need a code editor where you can write your React code. For this today's session, I will use both. Bear with it. So yeah, there is this nodejs.org. So what you can which is the one people prefer, because this is a stable version, and then you have the current. So current has the latest features. Now you can use it, but most of the features they are not really as stable as the one which you'll find in the LTS version. So and install it, that's pretty normal. After that, you would need a virtual or a local code editor. So for a virtual editor, you can search for Code Sandbox, which is a pretty famous one. So you can either search for Code Sandbox or maybe Staglets. So these are two options. So there are plenty of options, but I'm pretty comfortable, and you can also use Staglets.
Sayan,
Yeah.
getting requests of your voice.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, just.
Yeah, I think it was my fan or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was my fan. But anyway, so let's just move on to the virtual text editor. So for, you can use Code Sandbox, or you can use Staglets. You have both the options. You have tons of other options as well. So I prefer using Code Sandbox because So yeah, I prefer using Code Sandbox because that, I have done my demo there. You can use Stacklets too, that completely depends on you. Now I'll be closing this and we'll get back to the slides. So for local editors, you can use VS Code or any other editor which you are comfortable with. You can use Atom and other. So whatever you're comfortable with, you can use any text, any code editor. Okay, awesome. So I'll be using VS Code by the way for this one. You can use any of the code editors which you're comfortable with. So I'll go back to full screen. So now the Create React app, which I just showed you, is open source, and you can obviously contribute to it if you're interested, or you can clone it and basically we will be actually installing it, not cloning it, so we will do that with npm. So if you're interested to check more things, check it out more, you can go to Create React app in the GitHub repo and you'll find more stuff there. So let's get into this differentiation between npm and npx. So you might have seen in the documentation of React, because that's what you should do whenever you are learning a new framework or a library. You should always visit the documentation and check. So to install React, you need to do npm. You need to install it via Create React app. Okay, so the documentation, the latest updated documentation says that you don't need to do that. You don't need to use npm. You can use npx, Create React app, and then the name of your application. So let me show you how that looks actually. So if you go back to, let me go to this one. Okay, so I'll be opening a terminal, and so this is the project folder which I'll be working on. So you can actually do npm and then the name of the the package which Facebook provides, which is Create React and app. So if you do this, that will work for you. I won't be doing it because I already have Create React app. But the problem is, the main difference is when you do this, npm actually installs your packages globally. Okay, so if you give a -g flag, that is also true, but if you don't give it, it also installs it globally. So what is the problem is, whenever you do this kind of a installation directly from npm, so it should be npm install, my bad, npm install Create React app. So that installs your application, and it installs your application locally. So if you want to run, like if you want to create your React project, you have to run this what do you call this, run this syntax, run this snippet or whatever, run this command, and then after this executes and finishes, you need to do again create React app and then the name of your app. Okay, and everything has to be in lower cases because you can't name the app in capital cases. That's the rule that Create React app follows. So that is what you need to do. So there was 2 steps. Okay, so you needed to do an npm install, and then you again needed to do the Create React app. Now why? Because obviously it installs it globally, so you have to first install the package globally and then call the package to install your particular project in your folder. So React says that okay, you don't have to do that, that is a lot of mess. What you can do is just write npx and Create React app and then the name of your application. So maybe the name of your application. So what npx does, it directly installs the application from React. Okay, so Create React app from GitHub, it doesn't install it locally on your machine. It directly just downloads all the things which it needs and just helps you get your application ready in your project folder. Okay, so you don't need to do the 2-step thingy. You just need to write npx Create React app and name. So that is how you get things up and running. So since I already have Create React app and I use Yarn, so npm is a package manager, npx is a package runner. I must say it's not a manager because it doesn't download it, it doesn't install it, it just downloads it. So it's like a runner, so it runs your packages and not download it. So I use Yarn, which is again a sub package manager I'll say of npm, because I use Yarn mainly because of 2 reasons. It is very fast and it is used by a lot of industries. So whenever you have some bugs or you have some kind of error with Yarn, it just automatically gets resolved so fast, because since a lot of industry are using it. So that is why I prefer using Yarn, and I'm not being biased towards Yarn, but I definitely like it a lot more than npm. But you can use npm, your choice. If you want to use Yarn, which I'm not saying you should, but if you are using it, then just do npm install and Yarn. So that is what you need to do. I just hope npm doesn't ban me or something. But yeah, you can use npm install yarn, and then you can create your application by saying yarn create and then a react dash app and then the name of your app. So for this one, what should I call this? Let's say, I don't know, maybe day 2. No, bad name. TechStream. Okay, just call it TechStream and an underscore. No, doesn't keep it too long. It's okay. So if you want to do it with yarn, you can do yarn create and then react app, react dash app, and then the name of your project folder. So another method you can do it using npm is you first need to npm install create react app and then do create react app and then the name of your application. But if you do it with yarn, you get yarn create and then react app and then the name of your application. If you do it with npx, you do npx create react app together and then together with hyphens obviously, and then the name of your project folder. So these are the 3 methods which I would suggest you do it. You can also use brew and other package managers, but I would prefer yarn. That is my personal choice. So if I do enter, you would see that my project folder gets created in this particular toolbox because I'm using VS Code, so everything will be loaded up here. And this is going to be the project which we will be working on. So oh yeah, success, yay, install create react app with binary. So it's doing its thing. Now you would see a TechStream folder here, and there you go. And this will be loaded up with boilerplate code, which I'll just show in a minute because you definitely need to know the file structures which React uses. So while that is being done, let me go back to my slides and show you guys the other stuff. Okay, amazing. So where is it? Oh, you guys just had a sneak peek. No. Let me go back. And why is the taskbar still visible? Just a minute. Okay, just leave it. Okay, so the next slide is what is DOM, because it is very important that you know the concepts before you move into React. Okay, so DOM is a very crucial concept which you should know when you're doing React, because React works with a different DOM and doesn't use the regular. But what is DOM? So DOM is document object model. Okay, so DOM is something which is for example, HTML is not a programming language, right? So for any object-oriented programming language to understand what your code is doing, what you're writing in an HTML file, in a .html file, or any of the, when you apply stylings and you do all of that stuff, your object-oriented language, whichever language you're using, needs to understand what is being written, right? So that is where you use DOM. You use a document object model that actually parses all the things which you have written in your application into smaller fragments. Like it just sees the root element first, which is the HTML, then it goes to head, then it goes to body and the title. So it just creates this whole tree structure, right? And that's how you see that's how you notice that everything is working and which element you're targeting. Because if you notice, if you see the previous session which Aanisha took, you have selectors, right? So you can do query selectors, you can do get element by ID, document.get element by ID. So that is what DOM is being useful for. So what React does, it doesn't use the DOM. It uses what is called as a virtual DOM. So what is a virtual DOM? So think of it like this. You have a DOM, obviously, and then there is a virtual DOM that is connected with your DOM, okay? Now, whenever you are making any changes in your application, that doesn't get reflected directly to your DOM. So that is being handled by the virtual DOM, which is a React thing, okay? So the virtual DOM, what it does is it updates or changes only those components or methods or objects which are actually being updated in real time. So for example, maybe I have a to-do list, okay? So let's say my to-do list is I have 3 or 4 lists, and I only change or edit the value of the 4th one. So only the 4th one, only the 4th to-do bar will be updated, and only that bar will be reflected of. So the next slide says that is why React is an SPA. Now SPA is a single page architecture, which is why React is so famous. So you have to do you have to make your application, if you want to make your application single page and you don't want to render or reload your page again and again whenever you're switching tabs or doing any other stuff with your application, then you should definitely go for React or any other SPAs. Okay, so let me give you a brief introduction of what an SPA is. So let's just let's see, let's open Twitch maybe, and I can show you what an SPA actually does. Okay, so if you see that, just notice this, okay, the favicon of Twitch. Now if you
actually he's actually working, he must have hit.
Oh, I just started playing. Okay, so if you like search anything like maybe SPA, oh, that will open SPA, right? So that is not what I wanted, but okay, anyway. So if you click on something, just notice this thing is loading at the top, right? So Bing is there and it's loading. If I click on this, why is this thing loading is because it is rendering a whole new page, right? So that happens when you are transferring your whole DOM, like that is again fetching a whole different DOM for that particular link. So that is why the page loads, because you're like rendering a whole new DOM. But for Twitch, like it has already rendered its DOM, like when I created it, when I opened it. So now if I click on browse, notice that this favicon won't be changing because everything else will be the same. Only the categories or like the routes will change, right? So that is why we need SPAs, because it prevents rendering your whole application again and again. All right, so that is a very quick and a very short example of what an SPA does and why should you be focusing or working with it. Okay, awesome. Okay, so why is React, better, or why we should use React? Because React made things easier by dividing them into components. Now, what I mean by that is, just a minute. What is this? Okay. So React made things easier by dividing them into components. Now, why is because when you see an application, like you just see the whole screen, right? You don't think about what is happening behind the back, or like how this has been made. So with React, we divide those things into simpler components, and by that, let me give you an example to actually show you what I mean. So the favorite thing which I like doing here is whenever I give the example of React components, I try to open Udemy. Now I'll just tell you why I like to do that. Okay, so this is my Udemy page. I have tons of courses I need to finish, but this is, for example, this is an example of components. Think about it that way. So we have this page, and then this is like a list of cards, right? So we have so many cards. We have then this small boxes again, and there are so many boxes, right? So do you think that they have built each one of them individually? Like, do you know how much time would that take if they like created this box and then again this box and then this box? So that is something you would do if you were writing HTML code, right? So you would create this box and then again another div and create this box. So with React, what you can do is think about this whole thing as a component. So maybe this box is a component, and you just repeat that again and again and again. So you just create this whole thing by just making one component. So that is why React is so useful. And for the second one, this one, Google Flutter, you just create this small box once and you just map it again multiple times. So you have one box, you have this another box, so you create two boxes, and then voila, you get this whole thing and this whole thing. So that is why React is so useful. And you just divide them into simple components, and then you just use those components in your project. So that is why you need to write so much less code, and you get so much better output with React. So in this case as well, so you see this thing is being repetitive. So this is being made once and repeated twice or thrice, or however much time you want. Same for this one. So this is like a tab, so you repeat these. So you create components, and then you use those components to in your application to write less code and get more. So this is again an example of a component. So you have the search bar component, and whenever in your application you need another search bar component, maybe you want to create a search bar component here, and you want to search only the courses which you have taken or something, then you can just add that back. You don't have to write another code for that. You just need to call that search bar component which you used here, and then just you get this here, and that is that, as simple as it sounds. Okay, so I hope you are clear with the component part. Now let me go back to presenting. Okay, now what are the basic React components? Now we would be looking at this at the what are the basic components and how we actually write them in code. So there are three types of components, I would say, that is class component, functional component, and pure component. Now for class component, if you want more control over your component, like if you want them to have a control, like okay, so if you update a certain state, then do this. If you do not get a certain state, then do this, or something like that. Like if you want more control over your component, you use a class component, because with class component you get predefined methods like render and all of that. And we'll be seeing the demos, so don't worry if you don't get it right now. And functional components, they are also called dumb components. Now I know that is a pretty bad name, but dumb components, why? Because they don't do anything. With class components you get options to change the state, you get state manipulation options, and a lot of options. You can stop rendering, you can re-render, and check the update, check when a certain state is being toggled, and do lots of stuff. But with functional component, it is just a dumb component, because it takes a property and it just does some function on that property, and that's it. It just returns it back, so it can't do state manipulations and all that stuff. So that's why it is a functional component, and it is also commonly known as a dumb component. Now for pure component, why pure components are necessary? This is like not pure components are not a part of the basic React.js explanation, but I would like to say it for those of you who are interested. The pure component is actually something which you can go ahead and explore, because that handles your render function. So maybe you have an application which with every React application, whenever you click on something or you update a component or you move to another component, it re-renders every time you do some changes. But with pure component, you get the flexibility to stop that. You get the flexibility or option or power to actually stop your rendering and let that be. So you can control your rendering. Maybe if you want it just once, you can do that with pure component, or if you don't want that to render, you can do that with pure component. So you get much more higher control, I would say, over rendering with pure component. So that is one thing which is a little advanced, and you can definitely check out the docs for that, but I would just say that it is something which is really essential when you need to do controlled rendering. Okay, so this is how we write a component normally in React. Now these are the two methods which we generally use. Now there is you have to import React first from React. So React is the class which we are importing from React, which is in quotes. So that is the library, that is the React library, which gets installed when we do the create React app and the project name. So React is being installed in our system, so we can just call the class without which you won't get access to the virtual DOM. So that is why you need to know about the virtual DOM and all this concept before starting with React. So you need to import the class React from quotation React, which is the library, and to access the component you got to do component in brackets, because it exports a lot of stuff from the actual the definition of component. So it doesn't export only one thing, it exports lots of things, and when you get lots of things as an export module, you need to wrap them up in a component in a third bracket. So that is what we call object destructuring, basically. Now I have created a class called MSP, that is my personal class. You can name it anything you like. For the class to be be a class component, you need to extend it to component, and then you have a render function, and then you have a return function. Now the render function is what is the main method, I would say, which handles your rendering. So with pure component you get an option to stop this and like maybe do conditional rendering. So with when you extend component, you get render, and then you have to wrap it inside of return. Now this is pretty typical, right, for any starter, for any beginner who is just starting off with React. You would say that this is a pretty weird syntax, and I totally agree that it's very weird, because you have like JavaScript, you have a method, and then you have like an HTML too. So what is this? That is extremely weird, and you would need to practice it in order to get acquainted with this type of syntax. So this is what we call JSX. Okay, so it is not JavaScript, it is JSX, because we are wrapping HTML and divisions and all the different components, all the different HTML elements in our JavaScript component. So that is pretty weird to write at first, but you would get used to it. Now there's also one more thing missing in this, in this snippet, which is you need to also export the class which you're using, right? So I haven't written it in this one because I wanted to, get all of you acquainted with the way you actually write the component or extend the class component in your basic class. So there's another way you can write it is by doing extends react dot component. So dot is when you access a certain method or a certain class, a certain function inside of your application. So it's just like in any programming language you use the dot operator. It's the same thing. So you do react dot component and that's it. That is it. So let's talk about pure component. So it is exactly the same with pure component too. So the name is pure component, so it is case sensitive, so make sure you write it exactly like it is, and you extend the pure components, and again you extend you react or pure components whichever way you like. Now with after 2018, I believe it was 2018. So hooks came out. So React hooks came out. Now what React wants us to do, what the team actually wants us to do is, they say that you don't need to do, you don't need to make so many class components in your application, because you can do these higher order things with functional components now. So now currently in 2020 we can do this state manipulations and all these different things with React hooks. So why am I saying this is because I won't be covering React hooks. That is pretty advanced, and you need to know a lot of hooks to be able to do that, and you need to know object restructuring and stuff. So we are going to do it with class because that is still available with us. We can do it, but they say that it's okay that you don't have to make everything as a class. You need to use functional component even for state management, so that actually makes everything as a functional component. And even with the new create react app, the npm install, when you do it, you will find it's completely different than the one it used to in 2017 or 18 back then. So back then you used to get a class component directly. So if you have done the npm install with me, you would see, let me just check whether it has been done or not. So if I open this one, okay, so not this, just open src and app.js. Now you would see this is a typical way of writing JSX. You see function app. So this is a functional component right now, and it's not a class component. So this is what happened after 2018, after hooks came out. So they were like that you don't need to use class everywhere, you can just write functions and all that. So that's why you have functions everywhere in React now, but you still have, because React came out a lot early, like not early, like previously it was back, it has a long history. So people are more comfortable writing class components. So you would find people using class components in industry as well. So that's why you need to learn both. Okay, moving ahead. Now, what are the three phases when you actually write a component? So the three phases are mounting, updating, and unmounting. So what does that mean is, whenever you call a component or write a component, it has to mount in your DOM first. So it first mounts in your virtual DOM, and then if you do any kind of an updation, okay, if you do any kind of state change or anything related to state or any kind of updation, this we will see in demo as well. So if you do any kind of updation, that is why we use the updating. And then after we finished, that is a very good practice, and that is also used in state management. So if you work with any other framework or any other library, you would know or have heard of something called a state management. Now with React, we use Redux for state management. You also can use RxJS. Now I'm just putting out these terms for people out there who are really interested in React. You can just go ahead and learn all these things, but just get started with React first, just learn the basics, and then once you're comfortable, move on to these state management things, because they are a little higher ordered. So yeah, so you need to do updation and then unmounting. So why unmounting? Everything you do in React, every component you make has to also unmount from your DOM. Like that is a better practice. That is not necessary, but that is a good practice, because once you mount it, it should also be unmounted from the DOM, for things to not get too overburdened. Now that is the basic phases of a normal component. Now when you do mounting, you can see constructors, and then you'll have a render, and you have another lifecycle component which is called as component did mount. Okay, now don't worry about all of this so much. We will definitely be seeing demos, and we'll do some amazing console log statements where you will get clear about what this does. So if you have done like written any kind of programming code, any kind of code, any kind of programming languages, you would know what a constructor is. So when you make class components, you would constructor is the first thing which gets called when you when even in your any kind of normal programming languages, when you create objects in any object-oriented language, programming language, when you create object and call the object, then constructor is the first thing that gets called, right? So the same for React. So when you mount a component, the constructor is the very first thing that gets called, and after that you have your render function, which actually renders your whole application, the whole component. And once it's done, you have this method which is named as component did mount. So what that means is if your component has successfully mounted, then you execute this method. So who will execute this? Don't worry about it. React has all these predefined methods, so React will execute it. You don't have to do anything. But if you keep this, like if you just write this, you don't have to like call it anywhere in your application. React will automatically call this when your component has finally finished mounting. So these are the three things which happen when you mount your application. Now after that, we will move on to the lifecycle components, and trust me, I found this amazing chart, basically this diagram for Geeks, which is an absolutely amazing place for people who are practicing DS algo or maybe interview preparation or anything, just any resource you need. Just Geeks is amazing. So I found this amazing thing from there as well. So what happens is like you see an arrow, right? So first your component is initialized, then it has to go through mounting. Then if you have any kind of an updation, like I mentioned, if you have like state changes or something, then you go through the updation part, and then finally your component is unmounted. If you do not have updation, then directly it goes to unmounting. But if you have updation, then it stays there in the updation part and then moves on to unmounting. So the lifecycle components, which are very famous and used pretty often, is component will mount and component did mount. So it is pretty clear, right, from the name that component will mount it's actually checking if your component will be mounted. So if you want to do any kind of stuff which you want to do before the components get mounted, maybe like trigger an animation or something, then you can use component will mount. After that, you get to render because your component needs to render, and after your rendering is finished, you move on to component did mount. So that is again checks that okay, your component has mounted. Do you want to do something else? Maybe update. So okay, if you do update, then it goes back around the whole clock, and it will see okay, component will mount. Okay, it didn't mount. So do you want to do something? Yes, you want to do that. Okay, you have done that, and then you can do this updation methods, right? So you can do component will receive props and should component update and component will update, and there are so many lifecycle components available. So the most famous ones are component should update. Now it receives two properties, the previous props and the next props. Now what are props? I'll be talking about in the next slide, but props are like properties. So you can receive properties from different components or other components, right? So don't worry about that. So just think about you have something in your maybe left hand, and you want to do something, you want to change that something, and just take it in your right hand. That is a bad example, but let's just think you are trying to do it for whatever reason. Okay, so you have something in your left hand, you want to change it and catch it with the right hand. I don't know why you would want to do that, but you're doing it. So the left hand thingy is your previous props and the right hand thingy is your next prop. So it receives two components, two properties, which is the previous props and the next props. So should component updates actually decides that what is your previous props and what are you going to do with the next prop. So it just does the transition thingy, just shift in your property. So if you want to manipulate your property and all of that, and again the component will update, and then the render and component did update, which is again the same thing. If your component did update, if yes, okay, then you render this method, and this is automatically handled by React, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And then unmounting is component will unmount. Now once it checks that okay, everything has been perfect, everything has been mounted and everything updated fine, then I will unmount the component once everything has been done and you are like moving out of the component to a new component. So these are the steps which these are the methods basically which are associated with the lifecycle components. You can create your own methods and stuff. We'll definitely see how you can do that. Now notice that in the bottom left corner you will see the React methods and React DOM methods. So render is something which is handled by React DOM. Why? Because once you do all these things, like you do the component will update, with mount and all that, that is being reflected in the virtual DOM, right? So when you change your virtual DOM, once you do all the manipulations, so the DOM is waiting right now, okay? So he's like, you do your thing, you change everything, once you are sure about things, then give me the final result. So everything which within green is been happening in the virtual DOM. Now once things are, he's perfectly sure that he has done that and he's okay with it, he gives it to the render function, which is handled by React DOM. So now that everything is being changed, the DOM updates all the previous values which had updated to the new ones, and then it just refreshes that. So the page doesn't refresh, only those values which have been changed by the virtual DOM are being refreshed in and re-rendered into the DOM. So that is why React is so useful. Now what are props exactly? So props are short form for property, and properties are, you can pass it from parent to child or do a lot of stuff. We'll be covering two in the demo that is passing the property from parent to child and then back from child to parent. Now the from child to parent is I would say common, but not really very easy, but we will be covering that. The easy one is parent to child. You just need to call the child and pass it. We'll see how we can do it. Now props are nothing but argument to functions. So if you have a certain property, maybe let's say you have a counter and you want the counter to go to the next component, so you pass on the counter by just naming it as an argument in a functions. So it's the same thing like when you when you give some parameters to different methods in any programming language. Maybe you created a function and you passed on maybe a string value, and then when you call the function, you want that function to do something with the string value, so that parameter that is being called as props here. Okay, now props are immutable and they are read only, so you cannot change the props. Okay, so you can destructure it, you can access it, but you don't do changes in props. Okay, now let's move on to states. Now what are states? So managed inside the component. Now you need to have a class component. That is why it says that comes with React.component. Now like I mentioned, when you have components, you can have states. Now states are an easy way to maintain what state your application is in. For example, maybe you have like a toggler, a button, and you want it to toggle between true and false. So to make it have a default state of false, you can do like state of that button is false by default, and when you trigger something, the state changes to true. So that is where you use states when you want to store all the functionalities of, or do some triggers, or maybe add an object or JSON and all that. Now we'll see where we can do all this in the demo. I'm really excited for the demo. Now this is the foundation for stateful component, of course, can be changed or updated. Now which states you can definitely change or update it as you wish. You can do toggles and all that stuff. So that is why state is pretty good, and that is why you use class components and industry prefer using it. Awesome. Now let's do some coding and see the demos. Okay, now let me go to this sandbox, and yeah, there you go. So I have a lot of files here, and I hope I don't mess things up because I created this before, and I have like commented things out which I don't need first. Now let me make this bigger so that everyone understands and can see it completely. Okay, so first things first, you would have a a file structure like this one when you have a new React application. So you would have app, and you would have the test.js, which is if you do some kind of a testing using npm or yarn. These are the parameters or functions which you write your test functions on. So this is something which you can use for testing your application. You have an index.js, you have a default logo.svg. So when you run your application, the way you run your application is you just move into your application. So for example, for me it's TechStream, and then I can do a yarn start, or in your case you can do an npm start, npm space start, and you would see everything is running, and it will give you a local host. Okay, so it will give you a basic local host where you are running your application. You just need to navigate to that, and you would be able to see that. Awesome. Now if you run that, I'm not going to do that because I don't have much time to show the basic boilerplate code. If you do that, you will see the React logo and a blue screen at the background, and says edit src or something. So that is like the basic boilerplate code which when you run, you would see the basic template which React provides. Now this is the file structure. Okay, now there is something called as a service worker.js. Now this is pretty important because it runs in a separate thread than your normal React environment. Okay, so let's say when you do npm and when you're working with React, you're working in a certain React environment, right? So the service worker is something which handles your network. So when you do some kind of fetching, when you do API handlings, or when you usually do work with manifest and work with PWA, so this is the file which is actually handling all the network connections and all that. So it runs in a separate threads. Now with threads, the threads run parallelly, right? So for React to parse everything and get all the APIs and everything perfectly in the right amount of time, this is the file which is handling all your network stuff and does a lot of things. Okay, so we are not gonna do much of exploration in this one. That's it. So what we do is we create, so generally you can do anything you like, but generally we use app.js as our main application, like our main file, or should we call as homepage, which we want to work on. This is the main file. Now another thing is index.js, which is actually the default what should I say, default file which React looks at when it first runs. So when you run your application using yarn star or npm star, it will run the index.js, and index.js actually calls the app. If you look here, so it says React DOM, the render, the app. So app is nothing but this component, and you import different components in your React application by doing this. So you import the name of the class from where you have the class stored. So you have imported app here, and there you have called the component. So you call a class component like that, or any functional component, any component like this. Okay, now this is the basic file structure which React provides us with the boilerplate code. Now we are going to remove a few things in here when we do the project, but let's just go back to the demo. Okay, so this is Code Sandbox. I use this a lot. So we are going to look at, so this is again, this will give you a basic file structure when you when you create a new React application. So it will just have app.js and style css, index.js, I believe, and these three I have created myself. So what you see here is, to be able to write your React code, first you need to import React, like I mentioned, from React, and also to make a class component you need to call the component to. Now you need to do this class app extends components, so that it's the same thing, and just forget about everything, and you just write render, you close the render, and inside of it you just have to write a return method. Now notice everything has to be wrapped up in a single element in React. Now that is very, very important. Now if you have multiple things, like you have h1 p tags or maybe image tags, so what you can do is create a division and write everything inside of the division, because without wrapping everything in the one single element, React will throw you an error. Okay, so for this example, I have a div class name of app, and I have written this h1 code. I can write anything, so I can maybe do a p tag and close the p tag, and let me just close this, and let's say hello world or something, and that will be reflected in the screen. So that is how if I remove this div, if I can do that, if I remove this div and this one, so it'll throw me an error, and it'll say that adjacent JSX element must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So that is why you need to wrap everything in a single division, which is why React throws you an error when you don't do that. Okay, cool. Now I'm gonna delete the hello world thingy. And also, like I mentioned, to be able to use this component, you need to export the app, the component name. So you write export default and then the name of the component. Amazing. Now let's do something. We have the constructor. Now if you write any kind of constructor, you need to call super before, because when you write a constructor, it needs to load everything beforehand. Like, constructor has some predefined methods, some predefined calls, right, whenever you use it, especially in JavaScript. So by writing super, you mean to say that, okay, whatever has been done previously, if this is like the third or fourth component which you're calling me on, then super is something which helps you get all the previous values. Now we are writing console.log constructor and component did mount and then render. Now don't worry about this function right now. So once I do that and I see the console, you'll see it runs the constructor 2 times and then component will mount. Now why 2 times? The first time it runs because it sees the constructor, okay, I have to run this, so it does the console.log constructor. Next time it renders according to our hierarchy, so it, when we render it again, like calls the constructor back. And after that we are adding a component did mount, which happens, which works. This method works only when our component has finished mounting. So that is why we require, that is why this is being called at the end. Okay, awesome. Now let's do this order check. Okay, let me see where I did this. So I have this order check JS function ready. So what it is doing is it's importing React and React basic stuff. So we are doing check order, which is the name of our class, and we are doing again the same thing. It's calling a constructor and it is creating a state. So this dot state, so for example the name of my state value is hello, and on clicking this we are changing the value to new. So there will be a button once I import it. So it's nothing but, you know, on the h1 we are creating we are wrapping everything in a div, and we are having an h1 which is calling the this.state.value. So to call any state function, a state variable, we need to do this dot state and then the name of the value, name of the, what do you call this, variable. So we are doing this dot state.value and having a button generally which just changes the state to a new state. So we are doing this just to make sure that component will update is being logged. Now let me go back and close this. We don't need this anymore. Now what else? Okay, so we need to, you know, import the class which we created. So we are doing import order check from check order. So dot slash is getting the reference of the current directory we are at, and on the check order we are importing this. So whatever has been exported from that file is being imported into this file, right? So that is what we're doing. We're importing it, but we aren't using it. That's why it's giving this error. If you see the error message, it says order check is declared, but its value is never read. Right. So what we're going to do is use this here. So let me use this. Now you will see that there is a console log and it's showing some warnings, not errors. So what happens is again the same thing. Let me go back and you will see the constructor runs first. So it says constructor, again the thing renders, so it runs first, it's a constructor. Now component will mount runs first because obviously component hasn't mounted yet, so it runs first, and then you will see that it's saying that component will mount has been renamed. So this is the new syntax that React uses, that you have to do something like an unsafe underscore. So don't worry about it, it's just a warning. And after component has been successfully mounted, it shows the component did mount. Okay, I hope you're clear. Now if I close this and you have this button, right? So click to change value. Now once I click on this, you will notice the value has been changed to new, and this method didn't call, right? So component will update wasn't called in the console as of now. So what I'm going to do is once I click on this, you would see the component will update is called because our component just updated right now. Okay, so that is a basic overview of what you can do with the lifecycle components. So I am going to comment this out because we're not going to use it anymore. Now let's do the props example. Okay, so we have another method called props example. So this is the functional component. This is how it looks. We have a const and the name of the function, and then it is equals, this is ES6 syntax. So we are having a variable like a parameter box which actually gets the property from our main file which we're sending, and it returns, and it should so with functional component you don't have to do render, right? So you just have to do a return because they are dumb components. You just return values from that. Awesome. So now we are doing a props example function and we are returning something. So what we are returning is props.title. Now where is this title coming from? So let's go back and do, okay, let me copy this, cut this out maybe, and then call this. Okay, so what I'm doing is props example, and I'm naming my own function, naming my own variable title is equals to, and I'm passing this I am a prop. So if I do I am not a prop, this will be rendered in real time. So it says I am not a prop, or maybe if I close this back, I am a prop. So the title is being sent from here and we are catching it in this another component, functional component. So we are calling it props, and then we are accessing props.title. So that's how you catch the props and show them. Now let me remove this from here and do state management, not state management, like do change the state from a child component to the parent component. So what I'm doing is calling a function which is saying getting props back. Now this is another function which is actually calling this is object destructuring, so I'm calling like trigger. So where is this? Is in here. No, not here. I need to call this too. Let me just a minute. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am calling this function. So I'm having this, right? So I'm having an update counter, and the update counter is having a this.set state counter, this changing it, but we don't have any counter right now. So let's just go ahead and create it with a constructor. So with constructor you do super, after super you can do this.stay equals to, and you say counter is equals to maybe 0. Awesome, now you have this counter which says 0, and what you do is update. When you click on this function update counter, what it does is it actually like calls the this.stay counter and adds 1 to it. Now when can you do it is maybe you have a button, maybe this button, let me just copy and paste this. So you have a button which calls this.update counter, which is this function or method, and once I click on this button, this should change, the counter should be updated. You know why? Because we are calling this, and this is actually taking the state variable and it's actually adding 1 every time I'm calling this, clicking on this button. Now I don't want to do it directly from the app.js, so what I want to do is close this and call this button from my child component. So what I can do is cut this out and paste this here, because getting props back I have already imported from here, and if I go back to this component, this JS function, I can see that I have this button, and the button is taking a trigger. So what is this trigger? It's something which we pass from here, and we are passing the this.update count, which is the method, right? So for to update things, we are update things from child to parent. We need to pass on functions inside of our child method. So that's why I said it's a little bit complicated, but yeah, anyways, so we are getting this from trigger, and on click we are calling the trigger, which is on click we are calling the functions, and now if you see, it's working fine, but we are doing it from the child component. Okay, so that was all the demo I wanted to show you. Now I think we have around 10 minutes, so let me do the project thingy really quickly, and I think I can do it, but let me try. Okay, if I can't do it, I might just give you the demo which I have created, but let me try. Okay, so what I can do is, we don't need all this logo and stuff, so I'm going to delete everything. I'm going to make this as a class component, so I'm going to say class app and equals to no, not equals to, extends, and I'm going to say react component. I'm going to use the different method of writing it, so I'm going to say no dot, I want to dot react component, and since I'm using class component, I need to render. So inside of the render, I would just put everything in here. So let me cut that out and put things in here. There is a little bit destructuring, but yeah, I think I'll work with that. So I need to put this thing here, so I'm gonna do, I think it's good now. Okay, so since we are using a class component, we are putting everything in the render, and we don't need any of that, so we're just gonna close it. So we're just gonna close everything, right? So let's see what we can do here. Okay, so first things first, we need to call a constructor. So let's do a constructor, and the constructor has to call super, of course, and the super is doing this dot state, and it's actually taking robots. Okay, so we are creating a project which takes different amazing robots, and we are going to do that with a live API, so that you guys know how to handle APIs too. So let's do did mount. So this is a live cycle method which actually checks for if the component has been mounted or not. So the way we can call APIs is we do fetch. All right, and I have a predefined API. Let me just copy that so that I don't waste time. So this is actually taken from JSON placeholder. I think you might have heard of it. And now we do dot then, typical ES6, and I'm getting the response. Let's do it in a small r, response, and this is creating a response.json. So we are creating a JSON object, and then after we have done that, we are doing users, and then we are doing this set state, which actually changes the previous state. So what we're trying to do is get the previous state and change it to the new user state, which we get from JSON type placeholder. Amazing. So we have the render function now, and what I want to do is, let me think. Okay, so I can do if this the state the robots the length. So if if the length of my array is equals to 0, why isn't rendering? So oh, I think I should have done this outside of return. Yeah, cool. So if my length of my robot is the array, the JSON typically is equal to 0, which means there is nothing in my JSON, or there is nothing in my list. So I would say I would give it a class name of maybe name, and call it loading. So it's loading right now, nothing is there. Now what else I can do is I can call the other function, which is this one, return div class name, app of class name. So if everything is working fine, I would just change this to from app to nothing. Let's just do TC. Now I would say why I'm using TC, because I'm going to use a super cool CSS toolkit, which is called Tachyon. So if you have never worked with it, you would know. So I'm going to write the Tachyon syntaxes here, and I will let you know what it is doing. So I would say robo friends. This is going to be the headline of our application, robo friends, and we need some kind of like a method which can render all the different robots we have received right now. Okay, so what we can do is, to structure it better, I'm going to make a new folder and call it components. And another method, or no, it's okay, I think we don't need the logo anymore, so let me just delete that. Okay, cool. And I'm going to create a card list. Okay, and inside of the card list we are going to have a file, and we call it cardlist.js, and inside of the component we have another folder and call it cards. And I'm going to tell you why am I doing this in a minute. So let's say, like the Udemy example I mentioned, right? So what you want is, inside of my cards, so since we have less time, I'm just gonna use the example right here. So in our cards, we are receiving a property and we are destructuring it with the name and email. So if you actually check this this API which you're receiving, it gives us a lot of stuff. We just need the name and email from there, since we want to describe that or show that in our project. So we are doing an h1 of name and a p of email. So we are showing the name and email, and we are also getting the image from RoboHash. So this is an API, this is a website which gives you random robot faces, and since this is only one card, we need to show lots of them, right? So what we can do is, in the card list component, we can create like a mapper, or a JavaScript mapper, which actually is returning which is doing robots or map, and it is actually taking the index. So user and I are the both things which we need. We could have also done like an item, so like a one item at a time, but I wanted to show you this method of doing it. So this is I, the index, so we are calling robots. So we are taking this array and calling the ith index and the ID of the robot and the name and the email. So we are returning cards. So as many times as there are values in this robot array, it will just be returned again and again and again. So this is how you can render different components. And in the return, we are just calling this variable, the constant variable. All right, amazing. So what we need to do is, since we need to only import the card list from, I think it's /components and card list and the card list, we only need to import this one. Since inside of the card list we have called card, so we don't need to do it again and again. Now what I want is go to this line and add that, and that's all we need for this project, and that will be pretty good. So we call it robots, and that is equals to filtered robots, or let's just call this filtered robots. And so since this is not there, we need to make it. So let's just make a const filtered robots, and that is equals to this the state the robots, no, let me go back, robots the filter, and in the filter we are accessing each individual robot. So I'm going to call it robot, and we are going to say return. So in this robots, whatever the props we are passing, we want to return robot, which is the individual robot which you're receiving from the API, and the name dot to lowercase. Okay, so let's just try doing that. There is a problem. I think I haven't closed it. Yes. Okay, awesome. Now let me also add the two classes here, which I'm going to use with tachyons. So just in case I don't want to run into problems. And let's just do yarn start for this one, and we are going to see how it looks. So it takes a little bit of time. I think it takes more time with npm, but with yarn it's really faster. That's why I prefer yarn. And I think we are good to go if this runs really fast. And yeah, so it takes a little bit of time. But the good thing about it is once you get it up and running, so whatever saves and changes you make, you don't have to do yarn start again and again. So you just do it once, and whatever changes you make are being highlighted there. That is a really nice thing about it. So you would see this opens up in, the localhost. So let me do that. Let me just open this localhost. It's taking a little bit of time. So till the time it's taking a little bit of time, I'm going to show you what tachyons are. So if you search for tachyons, there is a CSS toolkit which you can find in here, and that is an easier way to write CSS. Okay, so if you go to style guide, you will see all these different methods. So if you want font size of 3 rem or 1.5 rem, you can just use F1 or F2 classes. That's why I was using those TC and all those classes. So you can definitely check this out, and you would definitely get a nice overview of what you can do with tachyons. There are tons of stuff which you can do. Now to import this, you can just do npm install tachyons. For me, I'm going to do yarn add tachyons. That's the method which that's the syntax which yarn uses. Okay, so I have the localhost already open. So once you get this up and running, you will see this starting the development server, and it automatically opens your localhost for you. So right now we should be able to see the robots and the names and in a vertical fashion, because we haven't added any kind of styling to it. So the styling part we will be doing with tachyons, and this is almost done. Let me just, this is taking a long time to load. Okay, so I don't know why it is taking so long, but it's not ready yet. Oh, come on. Okay, let's just wait a bit. It shouldn't be taking that long though. Maybe it's because my network is really getting slow because of all the streaming and everything. Okay, so that is taking a long time. So what we can do is, by the time it is loading, we can go to our index.js and add tachyons. So what we need to do is to import and say tachyons. That's all we need to do. But tachyons is not installed right now in our application, so this won't work. So what we need to do is yarn add tachyons or npm install tachyons. But let me just save this up for now, so that it's easier for us to see the results quickly. And yeah, this is the I'm almost done with the live session though. It's just this thing is not loading. Yeah, it's done. Okay, awesome. So yeah, you get the loading thingy, and now you have your main title, which is robo friends, and you have this guy, they are random robots, and you have the name of the robot and the email, which we just mentioned in our cards, the name and email, which we destructured. Now since this has no styling at all, that's why we are going to use tachyons. And what we can do is we need to close the server, and we need to do yarn add tachyons. Now this would take just a few seconds to add, and after that I'm gonna save the index file. Now why am I applying this in my index file? Because I want these stylings to be applied to every single component I make. If I wanted to do it in single components, I could have added it in cards or stuff, but I want this to be global, so that's why I added this. Now we are going to also do one more thing, is I want to change the font size and font structures and all that. So I'm just going to go to app.css, and I'm going to add this this few lines which says import the Google font, and the name class we made, I want it to have a font family and a font weight and all that. So I'm just going to save this, close this, and also in the index.css I'm going to add the one property which I really like, which is change the background color to a little blacky color. So there you go. That's all. We can save the index.js file now, and once it's done loading, we can do a yarn start again, and that will be all. So let me save that back and go and say yarn start. Now just notice the way it changes. Now it is looking very dumb right now. Now once this thing loads up back, you will see how nice it looks once the development server starts again. Okay, I think this is up and running, so this is loading again, and I think this time it'll be quicker since we did that last time. Okay, awesome. I don't know why it does it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let me go back, and there you go. This is pretty cool, right? So from that without style to this is with just a few lines of CSS and tachyons. It's amazing. So you can do awesome stuff. You can, if you hover over it, it grows, and if you click on it, it just shows this nice little click effect. So that is what you can do with React in just a few minutes. So I did the whole live demo thing in maybe 15 to 10 minutes. So you can create awesome stuff with React, and this is just like this is an individual card, and it is being rendered over and over again by the card list component which we created using map. So that is what you can do with React, and I think that is all which I wanted to show in this presentation, and I am successfully done that. So thank you guys for attending my session, and here are the social handles which you can follow me on, or if you have any kind of questions you can ask me on, and that will be it. So if there is any question, I will be taking them now.
Thanks, Sayan. That was an amazing session. I'm going through the live chat box right now, and everybody loved your session.
Oh, thank you.
Like, like we have Anushka. She's saying, Sayan, you are amazing. You do it like a miracle. I have not yet tried React, but fascinated to learn it now on Code.
Okay, I'm so happy that I made someone else happy.
Oh yeah, and then we have Raul Shahid Khan say, Code. Don't underestimate the power of Sayan.
Yeah,
on Code.
Never do that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Cyanide fans over here. Also, we heard from a fan that you are a vlogger.
Oh yeah, I do that, but how do you know that? You shouldn't be saying that in an MSP session, no.
Oh no, do you have any future plans for your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'm gonna be uploading technical videos, and after, if I get to travel along in nice places after COVID, I would definitely be making videos about that too. But yeah, for now I have like tutorials and stuff on code, basically on Flutter and stuff.
Okay, so jokes aside, we've got two questions come in. The first one we have, it says, should one learn React after JS, or one should try out something a little bit simpler like Vue first and then migrate to React?
Well, I would say that if you want to, you definitely need to learn JS first. That is the essential. And like, if you know basic JS, that is okay. You can start with React, you can start with Angular, you can start with Vue. I won't say Angular. For Angular, you need TypeScript, so you need to get a little bit of TypeScript thingy going on. But you can start Vue or you can start React. That completely depends on you. React is a little bit higher. So if you want to start with Vue, you can definitely go ahead. But I would say that React is not difficult to start with. So if you learn React, you would have lots of opportunities in terms of industry connections, as well as industry, the internships, or what the industry currently needs, because there are tons of React developers, and people are looking for more, because React is such huge and it's gaining such traction, and Facebook is doing such a nice job to market React and help people get connected with the different React applications. So everything is, a lot of things are built on React right now. You even have this extension thingy which you can like, let me show you the extension thingy, which is really nice. So if you go to extensions, I think I have it here, and I think it's this one. Yeah, the React developer tools. If I turn it on, you will see that it gives me this marker. So if I go to any other site and if I turn it on, it's like any other site, whichever site is using React. If you click on this, it will say that the page doesn't appear to be using React, it appears to be using React. So you can check the amount of pages which appear actually use React is lots compared to what you see normally. So people are using React a lot, so I would say you can start with Vue, but it's better if you start with React after knowing a little bit of JavaScript.
Okay, the second question goes, what is the difference between a library and a framework?
Okay, so with libraries, with frameworks, you have full control of what you are doing. Okay, so framework is a huge, gigantic thing, which think of it like, you have a very huge thing which you can, manipulate. You can create your own functions, you can create your everything. But with library, you don't have that much control. With library, you get to use all the predefined functions and methods which are provided, and also since React is like open source, people contribute to them, and you get different varieties of options with React. But generally, if you use a library, you get limited controls. But with framework, they are much bigger pieces of like the puzzle, so you get lots of options to you have different variety of controls. So it's basically depends on the part. With framework, you have more control over things. With library, you get less control. You have to use, like, for in this case, we used import React from the React in quotations. So that is what you have to do again and again. But with frameworks, you can change your methods. You can do whatever you want. So with frameworks, you have more support, you have more control. But with a library, you have less control, but you can use it because you have, you can contribute and increases functionality anytime.
Okay, the third question we have is, what is NVM and NPM?
NVM?
Yes.
NVM. I have never heard of that. I'm sorry. I don't think I'll be the right person to answer that. I have never heard of NVM though. Interesting.
And NPM?
NPM is Node's package manager. So like Node keeps these registers, I would say. So you have tons of options. Like, let me show you this project file once more, and you can see that there is this option which says Node modules, right? So if I click on this, you'll see there's tons of options. Now these are all packages, right? So you have lots of packages with NPM. Now what you can do is you can use these packages, install them. Now when you use npm install, so it installs whatever the name of your packages from the packages which are imported here. So node modules is like the different modules and like the list of packages which are stored in the npm registry. So it's like a package manager. So whatever you do is it's being extracted and installed and downloaded from that package manager. So that is what it is. It's a package manager basically. So is Yarn and stuff, but Yarn is a sub part of npm. So npm is like the bigger thing which is handling all the packages, and Yarn and Brew, these are all the small packages which are a part of npm.
Okay, the next question we have is when should we use a class component, function component, and pure component?
Okay, so the thing is, when you can use it is when you're trying to do object or state manipulations. You should always go for class components. Now it's a better option that you have hooks. So when you're doing any kind of state manipulations, always use hooks. Now I would say if you go ahead and learn that, you definitely should use hooks. But if you since we didn't do the tutorial for this one, I would say use a class component otherwise if you're not using hooks when you are trying to do state manipulations. For functional components, you do you use functional components when you have to only return a certain value or a certain property. So let's say you want to pass on some value and just do the styling, or just get a maybe wrap things up in a div, or just return that particular component. So that's when you use functional components. For pure components, if you want to maintain or control the rendering of your application, which is a higher order thing, if you want your application to just render once, but you are doing a lot of updations but only want to render it once and not show that in the real DOM, so that is where you use pure components.
Okay, the next question is how to use Bootstrap and Sass in React.
Oh, that is pretty cool. You don't need to do any of that. That is why I like React so much. But there's this thing with Bootstrap and React which really used to bug me a lot. Now they are CDNs, of course. So you need to add either you can add the CDN link on your, if you go to public, you will see this index, or where is it, index.html. So this is what is actually being shown to the users. So you can also do yarn run build, which actually builds your code. But yeah, if you go to index, it is like your normal index.html file which you make using HTML, CSS. You can add your CDN in the script. Where is it? You can add it in the link maybe, or if you're using different JavaScript CDN, you can add it in the script. So it depends on you. You can do that with Bootstrap, or you can download Bootstrap. So you have this package called yarn add React Bootstrap. Basically, you can do npm install React Bootstrap too. So you have this package, so you can download it and npm install it and run it, and then just in your app or wherever you want to use it, I would suggest that you call that an app, since it is the global thing which from where you're calling everything out. So you can just import, you can do import, let me type it, import, why am I not able to type, import react dash bootstrap or something, whatever the name of your module is. So that's how you can import it. But initially I had this error where I couldn't do it using just the simple React Bootstrap, because I don't know why, but then I had this other option where I could add the CDN, like the distribution basically, and I just had to write import and the CDN here, and then I could just access it. So either way, you try it out, whichever works for you. I would say the React Bootstrap thing really works, but if it doesn't, try out my way, the import CDN. And for SAS is nothing. You can just create your own SAS folders anywhere you like. So if I do maybe say new.sas, it is now a SAS folder. There you go. So you can add SAS, and then if you want to, it's saying marketplaces extension. Okay. Anyways, so if you want to add the SAS, all you need to do is import and then just do / and new.sas, and there you go. You added your SAS.
Okay, the next question is, what are the industry scopes of React compared to Angular and Vue?
Oh, industry question. Now this is a difficult one because I haven't worked in the industry, but I think, let me just delete the SAS folder, it's going to create a problem. Yeah, so I think is, that's a tough one, because I don't see Vue growing too much. Vue is definitely nice. It is nice because it is extremely lightweight. Now I'm going to say three things. First, Vue is extremely lightweight, so it is being used in applications where you don't do that much heavy lifting. But React is somewhere in the middle. Angular is on the heavier side. So when you use Angular, since it's a framework, it does a lot of stuff, and it loads up entire libraries and stuff, and a lot of packages. So it does heavy lifting a lot. So Angular is good for projects which are on the industry level. So I would say I think industry level people who are working with huge projects do use Angular than React. But for mid-level projects, like if you're making just a job seeker portal or your portfolio and all that stuff, which is there are enormous number of those projects in the world, so they typically use React. So that's why React is so famous, because people don't always think about making gigantic applications, right? So that is why that is something that I would say is React is used a lot in terms of when you want to make applications which are functional, and when you want to use applications which are used a lot in the normal world. But if you are targeting industry, I would say Angular. Definitely.
Okay, the last question for today is, when do we use higher order components?
So when you use higher order components is, let's say you want to do something which is not typically the default functionality of React. So let's like I showed you, that what is the order is you do the constructor, and then you have all the different lifecycle components and all of that. But for higher order components, is like React hooks is a higher order component. So what you can do is, when you try to manipulate states, when you try to do things which are out of the box or out of the way, or you don't want to, or React doesn't do it normally, you have something called as a prevent function as well. So when you want to prevent a certain render, when you want to change the way React normally works, you use higher order components. So use states and all that is a React hook. So you have use effect, you have use states. So you use all of those inside of a functional component. So functional component isn't supposed to do all this, right? So with hooks, you are making the functional component do all of this. So that is when I would say that you use higher order components. But again, it depends on totally your use cases. You might use higher order for something else. Maybe other, depends on completely your use case. But I would say that is typically one use case which a lot of people use.
Okay, I think that's it for the Q&As. Thank you so much for that amazing session. Do you want to give an end note for the session?
Oh, sure. Let me just stop this screen share thing. It's bugging me a lot. How do you... Okay, there's so many things running on my screen. Awesome. I think I have the screen share off. Yep, I think I do. Amazing. Okay, so yeah, I think for my end talk of the session, I would say that definitely practice these things out, because this is pretty weird. When I started with React, it was pretty weird, and I took almost a year to learn React, because I learned from Maximilian. He is, you can find him on YouTube. His channel name is Academia. He is an amazing teacher. I actually took his Udemy course first, and then I tried doing a lot of projects myself. That is how I learned. So the way I would suggest you guys to learn is do tons of projects. That's how you learn. Make to-do lists, make small applications, make a small calendar, and make stuff which you think you can build, and just try using React in them. And if you have any problem, you can contact me or any other React person who you think can help you out, definitely. And just do lots of projects. So that will be my suggestion to all of you who are trying to learn React. And once you do, always just go to the documentation. They are the #1 resources you have. No site will help you other than the documentation. Is it all? Then I think we should, if that's all, I think we should move to the quiz, because I'm really excited for the quiz.
Oh yes. Everybody, we have a Kahoot quiz now. Sayan's going to be sharing the details.
Yep, let me share it in the live chat.
So the link for the Kahoot quiz will be posted in the live chat right now by Sayan. Go check it out.
There you go.
So we're going to move on.
Yeah, I have posted the link. I'm also going to post the game pin for those of you who are, using the direct Kahoot.id. So let me do the game pin as well. There you go. Okay guys, so you can join in to the quiz. I think I would be playing a small very nice music at the background, so that all of you stay motivated while playing the game. And let me just close all of this. I don't need any of this now. Whew, that was a good session. And okay, just get me the Kahoot link, and there you go. So once all of you start joining in, you will be able to see your names, and the players will be here. We have 12 questions for this, and this is about web, obviously. So let's play the quiz, and I hope you guys enjoy the quiz. I'm gonna play a nice background at the end. I'm gonna play a nice music at the background for all of you.
Good grammar and spelling.
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With Grammarly, you can find perfect words.
Okay guys, I think it's time that we close the stream and get back. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Let me just open the Kahoot link again. And I think it's in this one. Yeah, so I think most of you are finished up at this point. But for those of you who haven't yet finished the quiz, you can try out the quiz. It's open till 11 p.m. IST, so you can definitely enjoy the quiz. And the questions were okay, pretty easy, related to web, and I hope you enjoyed answering those and playing the quiz. Now there's a little announcement that I would like to make is for those of you who didn't receive the certificate, we will also be providing the link for those of you who didn't. But apart from that, next day, which is tomorrow, we are going to have another session which is on Getting GitHub, cloud architecture, as well as Azure fundamentals. So that is going to be a pretty nice session because three amazing MSPs will be taking them, and you would get to learn a lot from them.